one of the things that I began to notice about the Bible is that if it was written by men, why is it always attacking what men want to do?
I was told, imagine trying to please God and it's too late.
Oh, that's scary.
I walked around with this fear, this guilt of knowing that if I died in the state that I was in, I was gonna go to hell. I knew that. I walked around with it and I carried it and I knew that.
Taught you that though. Where do you think that came from?
I mean, this is what I understood from the scriptures. If you living righteously, you got a good chance of going to heaven. But if you living in sin, and when you die, you're gonna go to hell.
How do you know that's true?
I think it's only fair that you ask the tough question and that you try to disprove the Bible.
What is it? Why do we even fear God? I realize, the Bible is not giving props to the Israelites. It's an embarrassment.
Copy that, Echo. Proceed with caution. 10-4.
I don't know if I'm doing what I'm doing because I'm pre-programmed by God to respect God and believe in God. Right? I have seen things, and I have, like, for instance, why do people lose their faith? Right? They may see something in the Bible that they disagree with. Oh, my God would never do that. Oh my God, I never knew that he told the Israelites to wipe out man, women, and children. I don't believe in that.
Right.
It may be a law like polygamy. Oh man, I have one of my wife in the that's not God. Why? What would God not will allow that, right, or whatever, or something that is controversial, or may I say it? There are certain biblical scriptures that are challenging, in regards of like contradiction, right? Or there's one, I think in the Chronicles, it said that there was a king, he was 22 when he became king, and I think in the part said he was
I would
42.
say a seeming contradiction. I'm aware of those. I'm aware of a lot of those, but when you read it on the surface, right? It seems like a contradiction.
It could be that, right? But what keep us worshiping this invisible God, right, that we don't see? We could maybe perhaps say that thing that happened to me a few years ago was peculiar, and that could have been a message from God, and that could be true, but we don't know for sure, right? What is it? Why do we even fear God? It's unlogical if you think about it. Why is that fear there? So the question should be, the people that are going to fear God are the people that are going to fear God. There's nothing you could do, right? I can't say, okay, man, go up the hill, you're going to see God, and he's going to talk to you, believe he's there.
Well, I mean, but it is rooted in faith, right? It is rooted in belief.
It's faith. I can't explain it.
I heard the gospel as a child, and I bought it hook, line, and sinker. I believed it wholeheartedly. And as an adult, because I strayed away and came back, but as an adult, as a logical thinking individual, I think it's only fair that you ask the tough questions and that you try to disprove the Bible. You try to disprove this is the word, and then if you can't disprove it, then it means it's true. At least up to this point where you can't disprove it, right? So, something I learned probably within the last few years is that faith is rooted in evidence.
Right.
It's not. See, a lot of people think faith is believing something in the absence of the evidence, but that's not according to Scripture. Scripture says that it's the evidence of things unseen. So we believe in the Most High based on the evidence. And we did a podcast last night, and we kind of went into some of those evidence, some of those discoveries, and over, the earth gives up all these things that prove the Bible over and over and over and over again. I mean, the ark, Noah's Ark has been found, the Mount Sinai, the pillar of salt, Sodom and Gomorrah, where they found the purest level of sulfur in the world, the Hittites, when they discovered the Hittite civilization, people said these people didn't exist, and then they kept digging and found them. So over and over, historical archaeology and things like that prove the Bible, not to mention all the prophecies that have come to pass.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's you have to try to prove or disprove something, and then based on the evidence, you can clearly see that this is the truth. Right. It's just like the conversation or the question of, does God even exist? Is there really a God? Well, the proof of a creator is creation. Right. So these are the things that, to me, prove or why I maintain my belief in the Most High God. Right. And so when I asked the question about how do you maintain that fear, and I would look at it like, where did the fear come? Where did it originally come from? When you first had that fear, why did you have that fear in the beginning? What was it that gave you that fear in the beginning?
I don't know, man, because it's like, my father was a pastor and we grew up with that tradition, but at early on, I was searching for God because I don't think I was getting the answer in, my father's church, and my mother was taking me after he passed. And then I steered towards the Hebrew Israelite community. And that kind of ran its course for a little bit with One West, Israel United, not Israel, the Universal Practical Knowledge, IGPK church, the original one, not the one now. This is a carbon copy, John Johannes version, so it's not the original one. But after 2000, I left 2001. From 2002, 3, 4, I kind of put it in the back burner. But around 2003, 2004, I began to challenge, and I was, the Bible, and I was aiming towards that ancient men perhaps were visited by ancient aliens.
Right.
And they misunderstood them
as God.
gods. So I began to investigate and research the alien phenomena. How many ancient culture got visited by what they view gods, and and maybe that's a misunderstanding. But diving into the alien question, it brought me back to the Bible.
Right.
So I was like, okay. And I also began to do a heavy research on evolution. Where's the evidence? Is this more towards an intelligent designer or evolution? Now, just because the evidence aimed towards the intelligent designer or designers doesn't mean that the God of the Bible is the intelligent designer. It could have been aliens. It could have been other gods, right? Or other beings of advanced intelligence, right?
Right.
So when I began to research evolution and things of that nature, evolution laws, I was like, okay, it sounds real cool when you're talking about we evolved from monkeys or ape-like creature, but how the trees evolved? Give me the origin of how the sun evolved.
It leaves you with more questions than answers. Right.
Right. How that, because how is it, we could talk about, biology evolution, but what about cosmo evolution?
Right.
How is the cosmo evolved perfectly to sustain life here on Earth, unrelated to
the Goldilocks zone and all that old nonsense? Right. I mean, they come up with all kind of stuff with that. Yeah.
So there had to be an intelligent designer, and I got to be honest with you, I just made a decision. Like, I think it's God, and I think it's the God of the Bible. So it's like, the way I look at it, if I'm wrong and there is no God, and if I die,
you died a good person. Hey, you were a good person.
You didn't lie, you didn't steal, you didn't kill, you honor your father, your mother, you love your wife as yourself. Those are all good attributes. And one of the things that I began to notice about the Bible is that if it was written by men, why is it always attacking what men want to do? right?
Good point. Yeah. Why wouldn't they write it more in the favor of the things that we desire? Why is it telling us
Exactly.
don't touch, don't eat, don't do,
yeah.
don't do.
Don't do and it's almost like, and what also turned me on about the Bible is that I realized, the Bible is not giving props to the Israelites. The Bible is
it shows
not
all the flaws, the good, the bad,
exactly
and the ugly.
the Bible is from the perspective of a few good men, the prophets.
Yeah.
And God talked to them. Yes, they were Israelites, but really they were recording how bad the Israelites were. So it's more like an embarrassment to the people. And when I looked at that in comparison to other books, the Book of the Dead and all these other ancient writings, you never had that honesty about that. Never hear about a pharaoh committing adultery with a soldier in his military and he plotted to kill him. And right, you never hear that. So that convinced me, like, okay, this is not something that the Israelite put together to make them look like the greatest people in the world. The prophets were. This looks like the prophet got, revelation from God, and they witnessed what the Israelites were doing. Right into Israel. Tell this to Israel. Tell that to Judah.
Right, and they got killed for doing it. They got killed for doing it. It was no benefit.
So it's really the story of a few good men, a few good prophets, men that God chose. It's not about this person or that, or the nation of this or this tribe or that tribe. It's an embarrassment to us and to humanity as a whole, because I believe that it wouldn't have mattered what nation he would have picked. We all on a fallen state, and look how all nations operate worshiping their religion, right? Islam, right, is associated. It's not associated with good. It's associated more with terrorists. It's more associated with extremists. Right? Yeah, I mean, there's some good values to it. I'm not saying it.
But just the way it's presented to the world, and especially in the Western world. Yeah.
Right. You got the Hindus, they what is the priest in the temple, their women's hair for the gods. They selling it from behind the back door. All these so-called religions got nothing on righteous. They got nothing, and they could say, look, what about this religion? Look, they're righteous and they're honorable, yada, yada, yada. So I think the Bible is a good record to keep people in line. And let's just say hypothetically, they were aliens. Aliens, angels, the same thing. Elohim, aliens, they're all just kind of the same thing. Right? Let's just say
that's a different conversation. Because I would love to go down that road. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's just say it's somewhere in the middle. Let's just say the angels do have another planet that they hang out in, and so forth. So kind of like they are aliens, but then they're our creators, right? Let's just say that. And the God of the universe is this being that created everything, and there's multiple different worlds, whatever, right? We may not be the only one. I don't know the answer. And I really don't really care, because it doesn't affect me, really, right? It doesn't affect what's going on in another galaxy. It doesn't affect what's going on here on this planet, right? So I said, you know what? It makes logical. It's not more fear, it's more logical sense. Following the principle of the Bible makes logical sense for humanity to have some form of the concept of a God, right? Because if you grew up with nothing like, there's a guy, there's a being in the sky that's watching over you. He gave us rule books for us to follow. And we have seen, when we stayed away from these rule books, look what happened. Look what's going on in America now, right? Religion is becoming more an ancient culture. If you really, it's more like a culture of like, it's nice, but really,
right.
Science,
extremely watered down. They're trying to get rid of it, but we know what's the Albert Pike talked about that. When that letter they discovered, this has been the plan from the beginning to eradicate Christianity and the belief in the true God.
Right.
So yeah, but then that's
And
definitely what we
even
see.
Rome, when you look at Rome, right, before it converted to Christianity, because even it got corrupt, or it was corrupt from the beginning, misguided from the beginning. Like, for instance, women in Rome, when they have a child or they had a baby and they don't want the baby anymore, they could just legally kill it. They could just leave it in the garbage. That was like a legal thing in Rome.
Yeah.
It was nothing, they didn't view a life,
Life, right? Yeah.
right of life, worth preserving, right? That's your child, that's your property, do whatever you want, right? Um, so even when you look at this, when they converted, when you look at the writings in regards to what was happening with Rome, it was decaying because there was no law. There was nothing really, all the gods was more designed for, like, hey, if you want money, you go to this god. You want a good,
Yeah.
spouse, you go to this god. You want victory in your war, go to this god. But there was no morality necessarily attached to these gods. The Khazarian Empire, right? The story goes that Buon, the king, started seeing the degeneracy of his kingdom, because they used to worship phallic symbols and all kinds of crazy pagan gods. And he said, you know what? We need to change this thing. So even people that live in a very prosperous, successful kingdom that began to decline in regards to morality realized, okay, we need to create some level of code. And the reason why the Bible, I believe, is the truth, because there is nothing like it to bring any form of morality in a society in the world. There's no other religion that gives you that. Any other religion that will give you that is a carbon copy of the Bible, like Islam. Where did Islam got its own principles from the Bible, and it twists a little bit, but it's part of the Bible, right?
Right.
And it's so I think the Bible makes logical sense.
Absolutely.
So for me, fear, that could run out after a while.
Yeah.
And especially if God doesn't jack you up, right?
Right, right.
Right? Because sometimes, you have a lot of guys that when you was a deacon in Texas, and I was an elder in New York, you probably heard this story before. Elder deacon, God been working with me for a long time. Well, what he did? Well, I got locked up, and I started messing around again and got locked up again, and then I got hit with a bullet, and well, maybe God was, working. Maybe he had to jack you up because you're a hard-headed dude, right? If you would have
Right.
lived it the first time, you wouldn't have to go to jail, get locked up,
Went through
lose your
all that,
wife,
right?
lose your
Yeah.
job, right? So they think they're special because God is doing all these miracles. Yeah, there was a bullet that's supposed to come to me, and then someone called my name. I turned around and saved my life. I knew that was God. And he's probably right, right?
Yeah.
And it happened 5 times where it needed to happen 5 times, right? So I think fear, for me,
Yeah.
um, it's hard because I am afraid of God, but I don't know where that comes from. I can logically,
Well, so
right?
yeah,
I lived a good life for the most part. I never been addicted to drugs. I never been addicted to, it's not like I prayed to God, God save me from this thing. And yeah, I have my vices like everything else, when I was a young man. But I don't know. I don't know where that fear comes from. That's why I don't know how to even answer correctly. I hope I'm.
So let me share my perspective, and like, because when I was, like I said, I was raised in the church, right? I was raised, Church of Christ when I was younger, and when I started smoking weed when I was 13 years old, right? And at that time, that was like the worst thing I was doing.
Right.
And then and I started veering away and going into the world. So I can remember, I said, when I turned 14, I'm gonna stop smoking weed. When I turned 15, and when I turned 14, I said, okay, when I'm 15, I'm gonna stop smoking. This went on until I was 23 years old, right? But I can remember always walking around as 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, up in that area is when I got baptized. I can't remember exactly how old I was, but I walked around with this fear, this guilt of knowing that if I died in the state that I was in, I was going to go to hell. I knew that. I walked around with it and I carried it and I knew that.
Taught you that though. Where do you think that came from?
I mean, this is what I understood from the scriptures. If you living righteously, you had a good chance of going to heaven. But if you living in sin, then when you die, you're gonna go to hell.
But how do you know that's true?
This is what I believe according to scriptures, right? And this is what
how do you know the scripture is true?
I that's where I believe it. I mean, Jesus Christ said
if you start digesting why,
I'm gonna get to that. I'm gonna get to that though, because because Christ said it, right? He talked more about hell than he talked about heaven. He warned and warned about hell and destruction and the gnashing of teeth and all these things. And so, like I said, I just right now I just want to talk about the fear, where this fear came from, right? So for me, that fear of hell, of disappointing God, knowing that God was unhappy with me, disappointed with me, because I think a lot of times, we talk about love, Jesus is love, God is love, and all this love, but God gets angry too.
Yes.
God hates too. How he could, because I don't think it's possible to create something greater than yourself.
Yeah.
So if God created us with abilities that he don't have, then that means he created us greater than himself. So if we
image,
right. So I understood this. I carried this around knowing that if I died, I was going to hell. And that just stuck with me. I remember had a dream one time, and it was a whole thing. I'm not going to the whole thing, but what was told to what I remember, the one thing I remember from that dream was I was told, imagine trying to please God and it's too late. And that shook me to my core. And I had another dream where Christ came back and I hadn't got baptized, and I was still and I was sick to my stomach. Oh, I was sick. Because it was too late. I knew right then and there it was too late. I waited too long. I kept putting it off. I'll do it tomorrow. I'm gonna change my life tomorrow. And then Christ came back, and I was walking down the street with my cousin and looked up and saw the stars moving from their places in the sky. And I knew, and you see what I saw, it's Christ. And I could have threw my guts up because it was too late. I knew I was going to hell. So this is that fear, fear of disappointing God and being cast away, cast into outer darkness. Where there be wailing and gnashing of teeth, where the parable that Christ told about the Lazarus, the rich man, right? And he looked up and he was in hell. He said, just dip your finger in the water and touch the tip of my tongue. That's how thirsty he was. And so that's a fear that I think for me, that's where my fear comes from. That's what my fear is rooted in. And I remember struggling with this question early on, saying, well, is it wrong to serve God out of fear? Is it wrong? And I'm asking myself this question: do I love God, or I'm just afraid to go to hell? What's my motivation here? Is my motivation, the love and desire to serve the Most High God and be with Him, or is my motivation I don't want to go to hell? And and I still can't say if it's wrong to have not going to hell as your motivation, because it's a reality. And like I said, Christ talked about it more than he talked about heaven.
Yeah.
So, I just want to get your feedback on this, as far as, hey, where are you at, or what's your response to the idea that hell is the fear, that the fear of hell is what, motivates you to serve God, or the fear of God is the fear of going to hell?
It's more like, I don't want to be, and I hate to say this word, the sucker who ended up in hell and knew better.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be, and there is, like I said, like, I will guarantee you that all your experience that you experience, or your exposure to the Bible and what is right and wrong, a guy right next to you experienced the same thing, and it moved him not at all. Right? And I think
had no impact. Like,
right. And what the problem is with guys like us is that we have that built-in fear. We have that built-in respect for God. We can't explain it. So then we, as human beings, we try to articulate it from a cause and effect. Well, the reason why I believe in God, because when I was 3, this happened. You're trying to rationalize it. It was always there.
Praise the
That
Most
makes
High.
sense? Exactly. It was always there. So this is the reason why it's important for us to come to terms with that, because in your mind, like when I read this when I was 3, 7, 8, 15, 14, it changed my life. So you think that the same result will happen to the next man. And you'd read the same thing and he'd be like, yeah, that happened to me on Tuesday. I read that. It's not really there for me. Right. And that's why I think that we just got to find our mutants, man. We're
Absolutely.
alone in the world.
So
we got to find, and because our field's already built in. That makes sense?
Yeah. But let me pose something to you, because what I've seen too, what I've run into a lot with my friends, like you say, because most of the people I know, we all grew up reading the Bible, going to church and all this stuff. We all know about heaven, hell, God, the devil. Everybody knows these things, but for some people, don't, like you said, don't carry that much weight. But when I get to the nitty gritty of this conversation with my friends, people I know, people, and I'm bringing these kind of things up, what I find out is a lot of people choose to not believe in hell. They just outright deny what the Bible says and say, well, man, I don't think God will really do that. I don't think God will really send people to hell,
hell is
for the bad people. It's for Jeffrey Dahmer. It's not for the regular person. But yeah, can you hear me? Did I break up? Hello? Can you hear me?
Right. Yeah, you broke up a little bit, but
okay.
I think I got the gist of what you were saying.
All right. So go ahead, what you were saying?
So, I think hell, right, in the Bible, from what I read, Christ went to the souls that were disobedient during the time of Noah and preached to them. There's going to be one judgment and then the final judgment after the 1,000 years. So I do believe God gives people a second chance and a third chance, even if they end up in hell. You don't want to end up in hell in the final judgment because, final judgment is final, right? And you don't want to even end up in hell. But I believe that as above, so as below, that so as below is also above. We have jails, we have prisons, we have sentences. Certain crimes you got to pay longer than others. And why is not the hell is like that as well? I don't know. There's extra biblical writings that talks about that, certain of the prophets had to spend some time in jail or pay their penalty. I think, David had to spend a little time in there. He got rescued later on. There's biblical writings. And I am convinced that we don't have all the records of our forefathers. I will guarantee you, we sneak into the Catholicism, the Roman Catholic Church, and all this Vatican, we could probably, capture a lot of stuff that we lost. So we may not have the full picture of what hell is, but it's a place you don't want to end up. First of all,
right, absolutely,
that's for sure. So because you get these questions, right? But what about my grandmother? She ate pork and worship on Sunday, or doesn't really was very religious, but she took care of me and she was a good woman. She was into meditation and standing on her head and praying.
I
right?
Can't tell you about your grandma. Because all I can tell you is this: is once you die, you gotta go see that man, and that, that's
exactly.
And only God can judge you. So,
do I believe that is it possible that certain people that did not kept all the commandments and they were good people and God or Christ will give that person a break or some form, or they may only be a certain part or certain time in spiritual prison, which is hell? I don't know. I don't know that answer because we kind of lost that record, and all we're doing is kind of picking up, bits and pieces about what hell is all about. But is a place you don't want to be. And clearly when you read books like The Apocalypse of Paul, oh, that's scary.
Yeah.
Right? And I could see the logic of somebody saying that it's unfair for God to torture people like that. I could see the logic behind that. And logically, within our human limitation, we might say, yeah, that's probably, kind of like overboard or excessive. But I'm not God. Because let's just say everything that we read or the perception, right, is true, right, about hell. The worst place ever. You don't want to ever be there, and it's eternity, right? And it's like unfair, and we like, that's maybe got a little too harsh. Now, I'm not saying that's what it is going to be for sure, because I don't know. I got some clues, I got some ideas, I got some opinions. I don't know. Oh, I know I don't want to end up there to find out, right? I want to know by theory, ask an angel or God or talk to Michael. Hey, what's going on over there, right? I don't want to experience for that for myself. But it doesn't matter, even if we think it's unfair, because what are we going to do about it? And what really convinced me that God is a sovereign God, that he doesn't have to answer our questions or come down to our logic, is wrong.